Good evening. It's good to see everybody out tonight. All the rain has gone away, at least for a little while. Hopefully, you didn't get wet coming in. But a little bit in the way of announcements. First off, uh, deacons, the four that were elected deacons that will be rotating on this year are Brother Gerald, um, Brian Allen, Shane Brantley, and Adam Rowe. Those are the four that have agreed to serve this year and were elected Sunday. So a couple of them we will be having an ordination council here in a few weeks. But if you noticed, we have two Facebook pages now. One is the closed group that is the prayer. The other is open that other people can see, especially for announcements and those kinds of things. We were actually running into some people that weren't seeing some things that we wanted to get out because they weren't part of the closed group, which makes sense because if they're not a member here, then that's one reason. But just to have a little bit more presence. That's what that is like. If you're like, I thought we already had something, we did, but this is a little bit different. Also, if you saw where Cole posted requesting you to subscribe to YouTube, you will have to have a Gmail account to do that. But if you are able to help us with that, if we can get up to 200 subscriptions, then we'll be able to say go to youtube.com/Eastwood instead of youtube.com/CS1273ZVB, whatever. They don't let you name it what you want to name it until you get 200 people subscribed. So that is why we are requesting that you do that. Um, but anyway, with Governor Ivey's announcement today, starting tomorrow afternoon, if you aren't aware, then you will have to have face masks. Churches are exempt from this while you're actually in the worship service, although it does not apply like coming to like how you get in here without having one. I don't know how you would do that. or other things like that. But and so, although we are technically exempt, we're certainly not going to require anybody to wear them while we're in here. I know many of you even tonight wore the mask and then have it off because it's not necessarily comfortable. We do want to also, though, help with that. So we will be having masks available for anybody that forgets theirs at home or just doesn't need one. But you won't be required to have it while you're sitting in here. Um, and I guess, though, if you're not wanting to sing or hurt Cole's feelings, you can put the mask on so that he can't tell if your mouth is moving. But anyway, so those are just a few announcements that we're going through. Tonight we are going to be in Psalm 44 for our devotion time. I can't say that Psalm 44 is one of my favorites. In fact, it might be one of my least favorite Psalms. How's that for a good rousing endorsement? Have you ever been misunderstood before? Anybody have a good example of when you were misunderstood? I won't ask what they mistook you for, but oh, you have 2 birthdays? You had? Oh. Me? I don't know. I misunderstood. Oh. But when is sometime that you have been misunderstood? One humorous thing, and I didn't get permission to share this, but I'm going to anyway. My sister and brother-in-law ended up with 9 people apiece, like 9 boys and 9 girls in their wedding party. And you're like, wow, that's a lot of people. And it is. They already had a lot of people. They were going to have 7 and 7. But when my brother-in-law went to ask somebody to be an usher, he said, hey, man, I'm getting married. I was wondering if you would, man, I would love to be one of your groomsmen. I'll just do that. And so rather than hurt their feelings, they just added 2 more. They added 2 because, of course, it has to be balanced. And so that was a time of a misunderstanding. But what are some other misunderstandings?
I can't think of anything. Definite, but my kids always misunderstood what I said. They'd always take it wrong. I say something, I don't mean it, just an excuse to get mad at me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When Facebook first started, years ago, told me if like messages somebody, they would always take it wrong. When you said something, they would get mad. So I just put it.
It's not my disposition to use emojis, but it's got to where a lot of times I'll put an emoji or a ha-ha just because I don't want people to think I'm being serious. I'm trying to be.
You're not using your voice, so they don't know, they just say something wrong.
Well, have you ever been falsely accused of something? Maybe, and probably it may not be anything significant, but I think we always like, who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? Like it wasn't me this time. I ate a lot of cookies, but it wasn't me this time. Well, tonight, I think part of the reason why I don't like this song, or why it's a difficult song, is because they just flat out blame God. And it's more than just a complaint, and there's no reconciliation. Like, okay, now I see. Like, they don't understand what God's doing, and they just blame God, really speak disgruntledly about Him. And there's not an ending statement that wraps it up all nicely, like at Job at least. At the end of Job, which is kind of similar to this psalm, only on a personal level, Job ends up saying, "Oh, I heard about you with my ears, but now I've seen you with my eyes. Therefore, I repent in dust and ashes." There's no repenting in dusting and ashes. They don't show what it is they learn from it, and so it's kind of difficult, or it's an uncomfortable psalm, or it's not as neatly wrapped up as I would prefer. But whatever the historical context, like when this took place, it doesn't say in the year that King Uzziah died. It doesn't say, during the reign of any of the kings. We don't know when this is. It could be during the time of exile. But if it was during the time of exile, then it seems logical that they would come to the realization, hey, we're in exile because we did stuff wrong. But regardless of what it is, anytime that they had a situation in life where they found themselves in a situation where they couldn't do anything about it, they were powerless, in which they couldn't find any rational or theological explanation, this psalm would really fit their situation. So as we look at it, it's one of the maskils of the sons of Korah. So it's not even like it's attributed to David, Solomon, or Moses, because the sons of Korah were from generation to generation, could fit in that group. And so regardless of when it is, it's a psalm that unfortunately sometimes we can identify with, because we don't know of anything that we did wrong, yet life is falling apart. But let's look at what my Bible at least kind of subtitles it, Israel's complaint. What are they complaining about? Verse 1, God, we have heard with our ears, our ancestors have told us, the work you accomplished in days long ago. In order to plant them, you displaced the nations by your hand. In order to settle them, you brought disaster on the peoples. For they did not take the land by their sword. Their arm did not bring them victory. But by your right hand, your arm, and the light of your face, because you were favorable toward them. So it starts off recounting the past. It starts off good. It doesn't contain the Exodus. They don't talk about how God delivered them from Egypt. A lot of times in their history, they always jump back to the time of prior to wandering in the desert where God brought them out of Egypt. It kind of skips that part. It skips the wandering around and goes into the conquest time, into the days of Joshua, where God went before them. God fought their battles for them. God delivered them. It wasn't their strength. It wasn't their sword. It wasn't anything that they did, but using the language that is found elsewhere, he talks about how God planted them. In Psalm 80, it has similar language. In Psalm 80, starting in verse 8, it says, you dug up a vine from Egypt, and you drove out the nation and planted it. You cleared a place for it. It took root and filled the land. The mountains were covered by its shade, and the mighty cedars with its branches. It sent out sprouts towards the sea and shoots towards the river. So that imagery is one that evidently hit close to home, or really helped them to see. And this wasn't from the sons of Korah. This is from Asaph. But that imagery there of being rooted and planted, about God, how God put them where they were, and they flourished there. And it was all of God's doing. So as they start off, and they start off thinking about, we've heard, this is what our ancestors told us, so this is what we've come to expect. In verses 1 through 3, it talks about the history of the nation and how God had blessed them, and so it leads them to a place of theology, a place of confident faith. He says, you are my King, my God, who ordains victories for Jacob. Through you, we drive back our foes. Through your name, we trample our enemies. For I do not trust in my bow, and my sword does not bring me victory. But you give us victory over our foes, and let those who hate us be disgraced. We boast in God all day long. We will praise your name forever. In this section, it talks about, it starts interweaving both personal, like I and me, and we. I and we, and it kind of bounces back and forth. It's been suggested that since this was in the temple, that maybe this was the song leader would say the I statements, and then the people would join in with the we statements, as it's kind of that give and flow and interchange. But in it, as he bounces from singular to plural, he makes the declaration, you are my God, my King. And then it ties together the theology there. God is the one that delivers the victory. And so it provides that statement of belief. As he goes down, he says, I do not trust in my bow, and my sword does not bring me victory. That, once again, goes back to verses 1 through 3. It goes back to some may trust in men, and some may trust in horses and chariots and the bow and the sword. is pretty common language for them. But they said that's not what they trust in. Instead, they see that it is God that brings the victory. It says, we boast in the Lord all day long. We will praise your name forever. So before we get to the turning point in the psalm, what do you think? How would you expect the next line to go? He said, this is how you've treated us. This is what we've come to believe. What logically flows next? What's that? So as they are coming to these statements and kind of expressing what they believe, verse 9 is a sharp contrast. It says, but you have rejected and humiliated us. Everything so far has been about victories, about God delivering them, about what all has happened before. It says, but you've rejected and humiliated us. You do not march out with our armies. You make us retreat from the foe, and those who hate us have taken plunder for themselves. You hand us over to be eaten like sheep and scatter us among the nations. You sell your people off for nothing. You make no profit from selling them. You make us an object of reproach to our neighbors, a source of mockery and ridicule to those around us. You make us a joke among the nations, a laughingstock among peoples. My disgrace is before me all day long, and shame has covered my face because of the taunts of the scorner and reviler, because of the enemy and avenger. The distress that's there, and it goes through all kinds of things, rout, spoil, slaughter, scattering, slavery. All of it is kind of it leads them to a loss of faith, a loss of confidence. It challenges their faith. It challenges what they believe. It challenges their identity in what it is that they think should happen. In Deuteronomy, and I'm going to flip over to Deuteronomy chapter, really in 8 and in 28, you could read it, but in Deuteronomy 28, I'm going to start reading in verse 15. It says, and this is what Moses, of course, is writing. This is God's word to them. If you do not obey the Lord your God by carefully following all his commands and statutes I am giving you today, all these curses will come and overtake you. You will be cursed in the city and cursed in the country. Your baskets and kneading bowl will be cursed. Your offspring will be cursed, and your land's produce, the young of your herds and the newborn of your flocks. You will be cursed when you come in, and cursed when you go out. The Lord will send against you curses, confusion, and rebuke in everything you do until you are destroyed and quickly perish because of the wickedness of your actions in abandoning me. The Lord will make persistent pestilence cling to you until he has exterminated you from the land you are entering to possess. The Lord will afflict you with wasting disease, fever, inflammation, burning heat, drought, blight, and mildew. These will pursue you until you perish. The sky above you will be bronze, and the earth beneath you iron. The Lord will turn the rain of your land into falling dust. It will descend on you from sky until you are destroyed. The Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You will march out against them from one direction, but flee from them in 7 directions. You will be an object of horror to the kingdoms of earth. Your corpses will be food for all the birds of the sky and the wild animals of the earth, with no one to scare them away. It keeps going. The Lord will afflict you with boils and tumors and rash and madness and confusion and blindness. And it keeps going on and on, but I think you get the picture. Could they expect anything good if they rebelled, if they did not follow the Lord? So when all of this starts happening, where do you think their minds probably went? I know for me, I would start saying, well, did I do that? Did I reject the Lord? Is this okay? Whenever it says that God handed them over to be eaten like sheep, God as our shepherd is our protector, But if the shepherd does not defend the sheep, then he's saying exactly the opposite. You hand us over helplessly. You hand us over without any hope, without any help. The description fits the punishment that God said would come upon them. It even says, you sell your people for nothing. You make no profit from selling them. As in, not only does God get rid of us, but he does it at no cost. How many of you, whenever you have a yard sale, you start off saying, well, I got to get some of my money back. I got to recoup a little bit of something. Like, I paid $300 for that. Of course, by the end of it, you end up saying, hey, look, I'll pay you $3. Just take it away. But at least at first, you're like, it was more valuable than that. Well, here he's saying, look, you don't value us at all. You're not making any profit. At least if you're selling us, at least make some profit. Or if you're turning your back on us, or if you're treating us this way, let it be for some benefit, but there's not even any benefit there. And so everything, as they are a joke, they're a laughing stock. As they've come to a place where the world devalues them and they even start to question their own value, they probably immediately went back to Deuteronomy and said, is this true? But then this is the part where they bold-faced say, all this has happened to us, but we have not forgotten you or betrayed your covenant. Our hearts have not turned back. Our steps have not strayed from your path. But you have crushed us in a haunt of jackals and have covered us with deepest darkness. If we had forgotten the name of our God and spread out our hands to a foreign God, wouldn't God have found this out, since he knows the secrets of our heart? Because of you, we are being put to death all day long. We are counted as sheep to be slaughtered. And so at first look, it looks like maybe they're saying, but God, that's not us. Why are you doing this? Look, this is not what your covenant said. This is not how we're supposed to be identified. I don't know what's going on, but I know that I'm in the right, I'm just, and this is still happening. And it seems as if they are blaming God. Now, dealing with the struggle of that, it's possible that they're saying not that this is God's fault, but this is what happens because they are followers of God. And that at least makes a little bit better sense theologically to us. It lets us rest easier to think about. And that's how Paul used this, actually. If you look, and I know we're kind of flipping back and forth a whole lot, but Paul in Romans 8:36, Romans 8:36, Paul, quoting from here, says, as it is written, because of you we are being put to death all day long. We are counted as sheep to be slaughtered. So he uses this psalm, and in Paul's context, it's not that God is causing this to happen to him, but because they are living for God, because they are light in the darkness, because they are Christians in the midst of a Roman hostility, we are being put to death all day long. We are counted as sheep to be slaughtered. And so maybe for the Israelites, they wonder what's going on, but in their righteousness, they're saying it's because of our righteousness, it's because we're still committed to you. All of the world comes against us, and all of the world is trying to destroy us. The people say that they haven't disobeyed, they haven't forgotten, they haven't broken the covenant. They've done nothing to deserve his rejection, yet God allows them to be defeated. And here, it's difficult to reconcile it all, because it seems as if they are talking to God, and they are arguing with God and saying we shouldn't be put into this. They are saying that God has rejected them, that God has sold them. Whether it is God intentionally doing it or whether God is allowing it to do it, either way, they are having a trouble reconciling. Even if they're saying because of our righteousness we are being given over, yet even then they are saying God is allowing this to happen. So they end up coming to God and saying, God, wake up, Lord. Verse 23. Why are you sleeping? Get up. Don't reject us forever. Why do you hide and forget our affliction and oppression? For we have sunk down to the dust. Our bodies cling to the ground. Rise up, help us, redeem us because of your faithful love. Here they come back to the point where they know that deliverance is still not of them. Going back to the beginning, they did not enter the promised land because of their own might, because of their own strength. It informed their theology that they said it's not swords and spears that we can trust. It is not the bow or the sword in which we trust. And here, even now, they're still clinging to that. God, you've got to rise up and help us. Whether they felt that God was literally sleeping or not, I don't, that analogy is there. Elijah, says, "Hey, shout louder!" On the mountain of Baal, with the confrontation with Baal, he said, "Wake up!" Maybe he's sleeping. We know that God doesn't sleep, but they're saying, "God, pay attention and quit rejecting us. God, pay attention. Don't forget our affliction and our oppression." And so they're praying for deliverance. See, they didn't know. They were misunderstanding God. We know that God always acts justly. Job, whenever he was going through this on a personal scale, he said he's living upright, and God even said in the council with the accuser that he's living upright. But then Job got into the pity party. It might have taken days and weeks and long period of time, but he was misunderstanding what God was doing. Sometimes we misunderstand what God's doing. We don't understand what's going on behind the scenes as God is working and dealing in our lives. And sometimes I'm afraid that I misunderstood, and I'm afraid that we misunderstand what God is doing. I don't understand what God is doing with the COVID. I don't. I don't know if He's trying to get our attention. I don't know if He's trying to say, "Hey, your priorities are out of whack, and you need to slow down. You need to care about people more." I don't know if He's saying that we're living in sin. I don't know what it is necessarily that God's doing, and He might be doing different things in our lives. But I know that it would be easy for us to get bitter about it. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize that we don't understand everything that God does. We don't understand all of God's ways. And what might appear to us as being rejected, what might appear to us as God having forgotten or God sleeping, that just shows that we don't know everything. We don't understand. Because when it comes to the choice between either God is not good or we don't understand it, it's we don't understand it. Because God is always good, and He's always just, and He's always the one that we need to run to and cling to and ask to rise up, to redeem us. I like that they ended, redeem us, save us. Why? Because of your hesed, because of your faithful love. That is that defining characteristic of God. Here's a quote from one of the commentaries I looked at. Sometimes we are better left facing a God whose ways we do not fully understand than working with a theology which claims to provide us with all the answers. Our theology, our thoughts might claim to be able to provide every answer and be able to dissect everything and know exactly what's going on. But sometimes Psalms like this are good for us to look at because it reminds us that I don't understand it all. If I serve a God that I fully understand, then my God is too small. If God always acts in the exact way that I think He should act and in accordance with what I would do, I'm probably projecting myself onto God a little bit more. Because He says, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways are not your ways." Look through the Bible and find me somebody that said, "Hey, God, that's what I would have done every time." Every single person in the Bible comes upon situations where they say, "God, that's not what I would have done." Where they say, "God, why am I going through this?" And it's not necessarily that they did something wrong, but God causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. There are going to be situations in our life we can't understand, where we misunderstand what God's doing. And it would be easy for us to falsely accuse God of being unloving, or for God to have forgotten about us, or for God to be wrong in what it is that He's doing, or for God to have missed our situation and to not care, or whatever else. And when we come to those situations, we need to stop and say, "God, you are God. I've heard about you, and I've tasted a taste of who you are. And I want to know you more. But God, I'm not there yet." And we might as well come before Him honestly like they did in this song. Because as they said, God knows our hearts. God knows whether we stray or not. God knows if we're upset with Him, or if our faith is something that we're merely professing or if it's something that we really believe. And in all those situations, we need to come before God and say, God, you know my heart. Mold my heart closer to you. God, you know my mind. You know what I'm thinking about this. Is it right or is it wrong? Meld my thoughts to conform to your thoughts, and seek Him diligently, because He says that if we seek Him with all of our heart, we will find Him. We might not know what He's doing today. We might not know what He's doing tomorrow. But if we keep seeking, then we will find the rest and the comfort that comes only at our Master's feet. Well, that's just a devotional thought for tonight. I told Cole this isn't one of my favorites, but we're going for it tonight. Why? Because that's what Psalm 44 is. And that's next in line. Next week we'll be in Psalm 45. We go through the whole counsel of God's Word, even when it's uncomfortable or not as well known, because it's all God's Word, and we want to be informed by it. But y'all talk for just a moment as I go upstairs and turn the internet off. Can you turn internet off? Cole and I were rerouting the internet earlier today. Because, anyway.